Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with a video to discuss the Total War Warhammer 2 Potion of Speed update. Now, before I dive in, I will be leaving links down in the description below if you're simply looking for the multiplayer breakdown and my thoughts on that. On the changes that will simply affect multiplayer, then I will leave a timestamp so you know where to skip to. We will, of course, first be covering the campaign and the general changes, bug fixes, that sort of thing. My thoughts and opinions on that, and then, of course, moving on to multiplayer. Now, I will say, this patch is a bit of a mixed bag. There are some things here that make me really happy, and some things that I think are very great, and then there are some changes that I think are honestly just weird or just outright bad and don't make much sense, especially as far as multiplayer is concerned. But we will get to that in just a bit. First and foremost, we are, of course, going to kick off with the generics, the campaign, quality of life, and those sorts of updates. So first and foremost, of course, we are getting a whole bunch of new content. Shadow and the Blade DLC, if you purchased it, is going to drop in Deathmaster Snitch and Malice Darkblade as playable factions. They come in, of course, with Hag Reef and Clan Eshin. We also do get a free LC with Lyoness and Response to Lyoness. So, you know, that's a pretty significant increase in major factions. That's 3 more major factions. And of course, there's an expansion in territory, Mortal Empires. Mortal Empires is now going to be even bigger. The map that's already monster-sized is going to be even larger, with multiple provinces being added and potentially shaking things up. They are definitely going to mean that the southeast corner of the world is going to be much less safe and much less of an easy camping ground, like for certain factions, like, for example, Krok-Kar, the way it has been for basically the entirety of Mortal Empires' life cycle. Now, as we dive in here, we can see that, well, unit portraits were fake, or more specifically, sorry about that there, smacked into my table, but Lord portraits have been changed. Rather than having the in-game portraits, we now have actual nice imagery there, so we can see what exactly they look like, or what exactly they're supposed to look like. So some nice little aesthetic changes, nothing too significant. What's, in my opinion, is much cooler is this end turn time reduction. Now, I've heard reports that it might be up to 60% reduction. Now, obviously, it is based on your specs. If you are playing this game on a toaster, which honestly you probably can't even play it on a toaster, but if you're playing it on a very weak machine or barely meeting specs, it's probably not going to help you that much, I assume. However, potentially up to 60% is what I've heard. Reduced turn times, which could be pretty insane. This could make Mortal Empires a much more appealing gameplay experience, and definitely this excites me a lot. I do wish they would add some streamlining options for co-op, just because I love co-op campaigns, but this is a huge improvement in my opinion. It's going to make life a lot better. Now, faction name changes, this is kind of irrelevant, but basically every sort of generic overarching faction got renamed to reflect essentially its starting region. Empire is now Reichland, Dwarfs, Karazak-Arak. Greenskins are Black Rags. Sylvania, or Vampire Counts are now Sylvania. Coast is Awakened. Bretonnia is Coron. Wood Elves are Talcin. And then Unorska is the World Walkers. So, hey, that's one that isn't simply a copy-paste of its province or region. But, you know, this isn't too important. It doesn't look like they're going to be limited to lords representing that subfaction in multiplayer. It's still going to be sort of an overarching faction. So really nothing's much has changed. It's just the naming conventions have changed a bit. Going onward, we do have the changes to Gotrek and Felix. Previously, Gotrek and Felix were kind of seen as a crappy unit, or you didn't really want to, or Lord Hero combo you didn't really want to use in practical games. Now they don't suffer from supply lines, so if you need to make a temporary army, there you go to. They're pretty good there. And Gotrek now distributes his XP gains to other generals, which is kind of cool. It makes them much more valuable than they were before. You can essentially pad up other generals and then replace them with someone else. Granted, that new general, if you replace them with, will suffer will suffer the upkeep penalty, or the supply line penalty, as we can see here. But by and large, I think these are some good changes, good fixes to Gotrek and Felix, and should hopefully make them a bit more appealing. I honestly haven't used them very much in campaign, because mostly what I've been playing is multiplayer. Or multiplayer campaign. I've been playing co-op a lot, and not really using Gotrek and Felix. So that's that. But yeah, they are. I think these changes will be very, very good. Campaign balance changes. A few tech swaps. Cult of Sotek is now going to gain sacrificial offerings scaling with enemy army strength, which I think is reasonable. I think that's a good decision on CA's part there. there's also a new late game dilemma for Reichland to spend extra prestige. I'm not sure if this is only for Reichland or if this is also for other Empire subfactions. I would kind of hope it at least applies to the Golden Order, because if it doesn't, that's kind of crappy. One of the big problems that you will find in late game as Empire, and I've been experiencing this in a lot in some of my recent campaigns, is the fact that your authority will be in the gutter, and then you just don't have enough prestige to, you have boatloads of prestige, but you do not get the dilemmas to boost your authority, so you're just stuck in this limbo, suffering that penalty to elector count loyalty and income and all that sort of stuff, and it's just stupid and annoying. So if this late game dilemma helps you spend prestige, could be a big boon. I would hope that it applies to the Golden Order as well. Now, some changes to elector counts being less likely to secede. Some changes to Dark Elf tech. Most of these are tech changes, some research speed changes. Honestly, nothing too significant in my opinion. Like Azag's going to research a little slower, Helman Gorst is going to research a little slower. The Smuggler's Codes for Pirates are now better at boosting research rates, same with Skaven Engineering Chains, etc. I'm not really going to break down all of this. There is one good fix here with the Norscan Marauder Chieftain's personal tree. It's been updated to be like other lords. All of his skills now require 2 points to max instead of 3, and they benefit on par or exceeding the generic personal line. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this means they've removed the god traits, where before the Marauder Chieftain didn't have a personal line. You basically just chose if you wanted to go with Slaanesh, Khorne, Tzeentch, or Nurgle, which was kind of cool. It was a cool mechanic, but the problem was that, well, it was very restrictive. You only had a handful of skills you could invest in, and once those were invested in, you had nothing else really, and your lord kind of stagnated. You couldn't get super powerful lords, so I think that is a good choice there, making the Marauder Chieftains a little more versatile. I'm hoping they retain those god-based traits, but we will see. Some reworks to vow buffs, extra 10% weapon strength with Questing Vow, extra, or not extra, but immortality with the Grail Vow, which is nice, saves you a skill point there. Reduced income for Skaven, economy buildings, or I should say reduced income boost from the energy buildings, but there's increased scaling and base income for all normal buildings. So interesting change. Not as a straight nerf, but kind of cool. Some auto resolve improvements. You actually do get Greater Arcane Conduit in campaign now for Teclis, Slann, Mazdamundi, Kroak, and Wrathy, which I think is nice. Definitely loreful and kind of cool to see that these super powerful lords are now actually going to be strong casters. Before, there wasn't really much point in these guys as a caster because, well, you got access to better or comparable casters oftentimes, just generic even heroes. Some improvements supposedly to Lord and Hero starting traits. We'll see what exactly that means. Now, Teclis does get a new skill, Manifold Sorcery, and he also doesn't lose the Fireball when he gets the Flames of the Phoenix skill, which I think is pretty awesome. Teclis is going to be quite the beast, I think, with being able to spam Fireballs plus melt people with the reworked Fiery Convocation. So, yeah, he's really going to be strong. Most militia units have now been moved to the settlement chains. We already saw this happening earlier with units such as archers and spears for Empire being moved to the settlement chain, Skaven slaves, of course, being moved to the settlement chain. Now, Dark Elves are going to have dread spears in settlement chain. Dwarves get miners there. Greenskins get goblins and goblin archers. Lizardmen get skinks cohort variants. Norsca gets marauders, and vampire guns get zombies and skeleton warriors. In some cases, this means that Tier 1 barracks have actually been removed outright. In some cases, this means that there's been some rebalancing and finagling of barrack buildings or that sort of stuff. And there's also been the addition of Blackheart Corsairs to Tier 1 ports, which I think is pretty awesome. They're getting that unit at Tier 1 is nuts. Dark Elves already have a stupid strong start, so that makes it even better. Clan Pestilence did get tweaked. Now they actually get benefits from spreading plague to their own forces, which I think is hilarious and honestly awesome, very flavorful. It's one of those things, that's one of the cool things in this patch. There's a lot of stuff that didn't really get mentioned or didn't really get hyped, but it's honestly pretty nice, in my opinion, and going to be pretty exciting. Reduced cooldown for the Rite of Pestilence, not too important, but, you know, it's cool. There's now also a unique Under Empire building that will continuously spawn plagues in the settlement above. Plus increased chance of plague spreading for the faction. So that's kind of cool. Clan Pestilence is now going to be a pestilent clan. And people have been saying that they were hoping CA goes back and reworks Pestilens and to be more in line with Scryer especially. And I like this change. I think it's a good idea. Making them more flavorful, really taking advantage of that variety in Skaven clans. Black Arcs got a complete overhaul. They now have they're now full characters with access to items, skills, and traits, which is nuts. It's crazy that they get items. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe there's only certain items slots they have. I don't know. We will see. Black Arcs are, or maybe this simply means followers, is what this means. Because I can't see like a Black Arc carrying around a sword. I don't know how that would work, or like armor or item options like that. So I assume it means followers and banners and that sort of thing. Black Arcs can now attack or blockade ports. They have access to unique skills that improve the army, and they will actually be updated in old saves. So that's kind of cool. So all in all, Black Arc changes look really fun. Looks like it's now going to be a valuable choice potentially. And keep in mind, Black Arcs, based on this, do not seem to have been reworked to now suffer penalties for upkeep. So it means that you still get an upkeep for your army, and if all you're doing is looking to ransack coastal ports, this is the way to go. You're actually going to be able to be a bit of a Dark Elf pirate, I think, now with these changes. AI has been improved a little bit. It won't waste its healing immediately, which is nice. AI has been pretty terrible about that. It's actually one way you can just abuse them to waste all their winds of magic. Just shoot like a crappy unit once. AI will immediately cast a Invocation of an Hex. Sometimes they'll even cast a unit that's heals on a unit that's heal capped if it's early in a game, which is dumb. So I'm glad that's fixed. Now all hidden items are available in both Eye of Vortex and Mortal Empires. There's a whole list of them here. I'm not going to break down all of them, but it's cool to see. I'm definitely glad to see it. Campaign exclusive units are now available in custom battles. You can't use them in quick match or competitive play, but they are available for customs, which is cool. You can now use the units like Gate Guard, Spider Hatchlings, the various Electro Count troops, that sort of thing. So if you want some loreful matchups, some flavorful matchups, have some fun with your friends or whatever, you now have even more options for that. And I think that is cool. I definitely think that's a nice change. All ethereal units now correctly show Strider, which previously they didn't. So that is nice to see. There's just a whole bunch of bug fixes here, so a lot of them are kind of meh, not necessarily, or I shouldn't say meh. A lot of them are definitely like solid changes, but it's just changes that don't, in my opinion, matter that much or don't really affect my thoughts on the patch. I'm glad stuff is fixed, but it in some cases just not that impactful or stuff that I just don't care about. So yeah, we're just gonna scroll through. I don't actually think there's any significant highlights here. Most of it is simply correcting issues with sort of traits, or not traits, certain traits triggering or certain messages triggering and that sort of thing. So nothing too crazy there, in my opinion. Now for battle improvements. Some slight improvements to improve frame rates and loading times. This is good news, I think, stacked on top of the turn time improvements. I'm very excited for this. Malagor no longer ignores shallow water penalties. I'm not sure why that's the case. I feel like he should, but oh well. Some fixes to units to correctly deal fire or magical damage. Warp Lightning, War Hydra, Arrows of Akshi, that sort of thing. Or War Hydra's Breath, to be accurate there. Not necessarily just War Hydra. Fixes to units' class definitions, yeah, all sorts of stuff. Certain units had buggy or inaccurate cap groups. So, yeah, for example, Ushapti were considered missile chariots, which they're not. And yeah, it's just a bunch of sort of solid bug fixes, but yeah. Nothing crazy. One nice thing here is that the Marauder Chieftain no longer loses the passive Rage when you remove other abilities. I don't know if this means he's going to have Rage now on every mount he takes, or if it's still going to be limited to certain mounts. But well, I'm definitely happy to see it. Wolfric now gets the Lord version of Rage instead of the unit version, so I'm not sure what that means, because I do believe there's a rework of Rage somewhere if I can find it, but because there's not. Was there a rework? That would mean I don't remember seeing one, which is weird. Because the normally Rage sort of has a consistent effect for everybody, so I'm not sure what that entails, but we'll certainly see, I guess, when the patch hits. And then, yeah, so a bunch of fixes to voice lines not triggering as frequently now, or not some certain ones like War Wagon's not saying Outriders anymore. That sort of thing has been fixed, which is nice, but whatever. It's all minor bug fixes. New achievements were added. That's nice if you're an achievement hunter. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm not super concerned about those, but you know, it's nice to see, I guess. Some audio improvements, some improvements to visuals and sort of visual cues in battle, which is often nice. They did tell the demon to shut up, which is nice. That should give us at least a patch or two more delay. And now if you do play on a Polish version, you will no longer have random Russian lines popping up in Gorak's Immortal Empire's Flyby. So, yeah, fun fact. There's also now that does wrap up the single player stuff. I think that most of it is pretty good. Obviously, didn't focus too much here on the changes to bug fixes and all that. If you want to check them out yourselves, you guys absolutely can. I will leave the link to the patch notes down below. But all in all, I think the campaign changes are actually stellar. I think they are very good. There are a few things I would have liked to see added as well, but that's just me being greedy and wanting more. But I actually, honestly, love those changes. Now, as far as battle balance changes, this is where we're getting into the realm of multiplayer. First and foremost, knockdown changes. Apparently, and I didn't know this, so I've actually learned something new today. The knockdown system used to affect heavily armored units more effectively, or more significantly. Now it no longer does that, so that's nice. It means armored units are not overwhelmed by knockdown effects. This hopefully will mean units like Treemen, for example, don't get knocked down as easily. Would assume that will help them. There's also been improvements to splash damage attacks for a lot of Warhammer 2 Lords, which is kind of, or Lords and Heroes, I should say, which is kind of cool to see. But I'm not entirely sure what this will entail, if we'll really be seeing a significant change in sort of performance or meta or anything of that nature, just because of splash damage changes, especially because these are on foot units, which you're almost never going to see most of these characters on foot. Like, sure, you'll see Lithanar, but he's not going to be fighting on foot. Like, maybe it'll affect the Lore Master of Hoeth, and I'm sure there's a few others in here, Queek, for example, but the majority of these characters are not really going to see the difference there. Now, balance changes, and this is where things get a little questionable. Khazrak, Razor Gore Chariot change. Less armor, less cost. Whatever. It doesn't really bother me too much. I think it's fine. I'd rather have just seen him not lose the armor and just reduce cost, because Khazrak's still kind of meh, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Chaos Spawn, no longer marked as high threat, and we're going to see a lot of these no longer marked as high threat anymore. Traits. I don't know what really the point of that is. I don't know if it affects AI's prioritization of units, or if it is simply a visual cue for human players to see, oh, this unit is supposedly very strong. But whatever the case may be, and if one of you guys knows, certainly correct me or let me know what the exact meaning of high threat is. If it actually has a gameplay effect, or if it simply is a cue for you as a player to help you prioritize units. I'm not sure, but there's a whole bunch of changes like this, and I'm not going to sort of highlight every one. But yeah, the Chaos Spawn are no longer that. All Minotaurs dropped in cost by 100, and this, I think, is a stupid move. Shields especially should not be going down in cost. Great weapons and normal Minotaurs, sure, they could go down a little bit in cost. The problem is that these units are actually pretty good in most ways, except their armor is terrible, and they have no shields, which immediately means that in most matchups, they are a super unreliable unit, and it's kind of a niche unit. And much like Empire Demigryph Knights, it's not that the unit is bad for the price, or objectively bad as far as its stats goes, it's that the unit is just not what the roster necessarily needs. This is a gross overbuff to Minotaurs with Shields, who are already a stellar unit for their price point, and it is not really going to fix Minotaurs or Minotaurs with great weapons. People are just going to bring even cheaper Minotaurs with Shields, which is not right, and this, I think, is just a bad choice. At least if they'd only drop the price on Minotaur great weapons and normal Minotaurs, I could kind of understand this change, but because it affects all the Minotaurs, I think it's just dumb. I'm going to be straight up front with that. I don't think this is a good idea. For Bretonnia, Green Knight has improved hit reaction ignore chance, which is nice. Previously, the Green Knight could kind of get stun locked by a lot of big monsters, and that made his already iffy performance against the single entities he's supposed to be good against even iffier. So hopefully that helps him. Outbreak now does more AP damage on Foot and Pegasus, which is whatever, in my opinion. It's basically irrelevant. You're never going to bring him on Foot or Pegasus. And on his Hippogriff, he does 10 more base damage, which is also irrelevant because the Hippogriff's all about AP. So it's whatever, in my opinion. If you guys disagree, you love Albrecht on Foot or Pegasus, let me know. But I just don't see that as a game changer. Now, Blessed Field Trebuchet did get changed to have reduced radius on the projectile. This, I've seen some arguments that this is just that this is a nerf. I've seen some that it's not really going to impact it. How exactly it's going to impact the Trebuchet is being debated. I think this is a bit of a double-edged sword. I think on one hand, CA is trying to reduce the Blessed Trebuchet's performance against blobs of infantry and cavalry, because supposedly it was pretty strong against those, or too strong against those in some cases before. I don't believe that personally. I've never really experienced that or seen it happen, but that's been some arguments I've seen. The other point, of course, is that reducing the projectile size will mean that it's less likely to hit your own units, which in turn should make that no splash friendly fire more significant. Grail League is now marked as a high threat, which I think is dumb. Doesn't even make sense. The unit's just not really in a good spot right now, so I'm not sure why that is. Paladin got +8 bonus for Slarge, which is basically irrelevant. It is not helping the Paladin. It's not helping Bretonnia. Paladin doesn't need +8 bonus for Slarge. He really needs AP, basically. Companion of Canal, getting 100 more expensive and getting +10 bonus for Slarge. Another why. These guys do not deserve a +10 bonus for Slarge for only 100 cost. They were already underpriced when they took a price cut earlier. And this isn't going to help them in any matchup. This might help a little bit against Empire, and that's really it. In most matchups, this is irrelevant, because Bretonnia's problem is that their cav cannot get on top of big armored monsters. That's why Grails don't counter monsters. That's why questing guys don't counter big heavily armored monsters, because they cannot get on top of them. You cannot plow through Chosen Halberds. You cannot plow through Temple Guard, and these changes here are literally irrelevant to that. So it might help a little bit against Empire, maybe a tiny bit against Vampire Counts, the only two factions that will contest you in the cav game, but irrelevant for the matchups where Bretonnia actually struggles. And I think it's just a dumb choice, in my honest opinion. Really, honestly, it's already been like a lot of either meh, like who cares about these changes, and then several just pointless changes, and or bad, outright, in my opinion, just bad changes. So it's already 2 factions through and not looking too hot. Dark Elves. Dark Riders got more leadership, which I think is good. That is definitely a nice fix. Malekith's Cold One trait now has block chance, which is interesting. It looks like CA has decided that chariots will now get block chance if their riders have shields, I guess, which is weird. He does have less armor, though, so he won't be as tanky against melee. Hargonath Executioners and Blackguard did get +4 HP per entity, which I think is fair. Dark Elves have been struggling a little bit with, especially the Hargonath Executioners have been argued to be a little underpowered. Blackguard, while being situationally strong because of their immunity, psychology, and high leadership, can also struggle a little bit. So I can understand why this was done. I think +4 health per entity might be a little much as an immediate starting point. Maybe +2 would have been a smarter opening, but and then buff it more if needed. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad decision. So definitely props on the Dark Elf changes here. Witch Elves mounted on Cauldron of Blood, now through knives. That's kind of whatever. I don't know if that really has much of an impact on the performance of the unit. For the Dwarfs, Ghostmaster Engineer added added magic damage. The projectile, basically irrelevant. The Ghost Heroes still suck. Dragonback Slayers cost 50 more, which I can understand. They're basically an auto pick unit right now for Dwarfs. So, but at the same time, I feel like part of it just boils down to the Dwarf roster's design. These guys, their slow is just so valuable. Well, this is a nerf. I don't know if that's fair. Flame Cannon dropping in 50 and cost by 50. Basically, it's irrelevant. Flame Cannon is still just garbage. As Dwarfs, you just have to invest so much. If you want to bring a Flame Cannon against most factions, you're going to have to invest in so much additional. You're going to have to invest so much additional money in cannons to protect it against enemy counter battery fire and all this other stuff. It's just not worth it. 50 cost is a joke. Yeah, so sorry. No, it's just not doing anything for it. Longbeard plus 50 cost. I think that's fair. Longbeards are definitely a bit of an overtuned unit for their relatively low price point. One of the big problems for a lot of factions against dwarves now is the fact that their infantry, because of the dwarves do lack high mass units, the end result is that what units the dwarves do have tend to be pretty cost effective. They tend to be very very cost effective. Most of them are arguably overtuned by at least a little bit, if not a lot. And I think Longbeards are definitely one of them. I think increasing their cost is probably a fair move. It should help restrict them a little bit. Whether plus 50 is too much, maybe plus 25 would have been a better opening change. I don't know, but definitely something. Organ gun got more accurate, which is okay. Don't mind it. It's already pretty strong artillery piece, but making it a little more powerful is nice. Ranger great weapons, more range. It's okay. I think they're a solid unit as is. I don't think they really need a buff, but I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. For Empire, Flagellant's got plus 2 melee defense. I think that's okay. Flags are in a little bit of a weak spot. I still don't think they're going to be a super worthwhile unit, but it's a decent choice. Halberds, minus 25 cost, in my opinion, completely irrelevant. Halberds, in my opinion, are never going to be viable for Empire, or never going to be a good choice for Empire until they're completely overhauled into something different. Because a 600 plus gold unit, anti-large AP infantry unit is just not worth anything to a faction with guns and a superb heavy Catholic Empire. So, yeah. And cheap chaff. Even though spearmen are going up in cost, it's not going to make things, make halberds suddenly become competitive. People are still going to take spears. They're just going to cut a foe seeker or something somewhere to free up money for the spearmen. They'll give up some chevrons. Greatswords got plus 1 bonus for infantry. I think that's okay. Greatswords are a smidgen underpowered, probably. So I think that's fine. War Wagon, plus 40 ammo, minus 50 cost. What a joke. Now the unit's only 150 overpriced instead of 200 overpriced, at least. It's still not good. Still would never use it. Still, it's garbage. War Wagon Mortar, minus 50 cost. I think that's good. I think at this point it should be pretty competitive. I don't know if it needs any more cuts. I'm pretty happy about that. Free Company Militia, Firewall moving. Good stuff. Happy to see it. Warrior Priest no longer has access to Scroll of Power. Now gets Scroll of Shielding. I'm not the hugest fan of this, honestly. Like, I think the Scroll of Power needs to be removed. But the Scroll of Shielding, I don't think actually fixes the situation. It just means you can now stack shield or awards in a different manner, which is one of the big problems with the Warrior Priest Scroll of Power. So, not sure about this, but at least it's something. It is, I think, a positive improvement, but not by much. Luminarch of Ish, more range and ammo for base and regular round. I don't know. Luminarch's a bit of a meme. This will make it a little more of a reliable meme, or more reliable once you've killed that sort of primary target, but still not, I think, the hugest or most valuable unit. And Karl got more melee defense on all of his mounts except Deathclaw, which I think is stupid, to be quite blunt. He gets hold the line, and as far as I've seen, he does not lose hold the line with these changes. Karl's a beast on a horse. I think a lot of people underestimate just how strong Karl is without Deathclaw. I think a lot of people just actually waste money putting him on Deathclaw when you can just Deathball him with Demigryphs. And giving him 7 more melee defense is completely unnecessary in my opinion. Just no. This should have come at least with a price increase for Karl Franz. I say this is an Empire main, essentially. I play a lot of Empire. They're my favorite faction. Not grand. I play about everything, basically. But Empire is my favorite faction. And I say this is a bad change. I think Karl does not need to be better than he already is. Now, Greenskins, and this is actually one place where I will say I'm actually happy about a lot of the changes. Orc Boar Boys, across the board, some great buffs. Big Guns, plus 15 armor. This is nice. This suddenly takes them from 60 to 75. Still not top tier armor, but it means that they do not get just completely creamed by trash spears immediately. They're still going to melt, but not as easily, and it is a good improvement. Normal Boar Boys, plus 5 armor, some more charge. Decent improvement, not huge, but you know, a little bit counts. Savage Orc Boar Boys, plus 2 armor. Now this is a total joke. I'm not sure who thought this is good, but whatever, I guess. I just don't care. Maybe this was a typo. Maybe it was supposed to be plus 2 charge bonus. But whatever, I guess. But I'm actually happy about the Boar Boy Big Guns. Orc Boar Chariot lost some armor, went down in cost. I think that's okay. Armor's not too valuable on a chariot. At least not a chariot of this nature. I think that's pretty fair. Forest Goblin Spider Riders got slightly nerfed, though in a kind of meaningless way. They lost charge bonus. The units probably should have gone up in cost instead, in my opinion. Orc War Boss is more expensive, but now is an AP character. He does get back here, so he can rally the troops with some leadership buffs. But yeah, he's now an AP character. Gets even more AP on the boar, and on a wyvern he's cheaper. So I'm cheaper, guys. I'm cheap. Now you know. But yeah, in my opinion, some good changes for the war boss. I still think he's too squishy. I still think he needs more HP, but the fact that he's at least now AP is a good boost. Skarsnik gets back here now. Grimgor is marked as high threat, which I think is hilarious. Azak now has more AP on foot, so that's cool. Definitely some solid buffs here. I'm especially happy about the Orc Warboy Big Guns getting more armor. I think all in all, these are some decent changes for the Greenskins. For the High Elves, Ithilmar Chariots for the Mage now get plus 50 armor and are more expensive. Makes sense. The Mage's Chariot is definitely lackluster and not super good. Alariel's more expensive. Fair. She's really strong. Though I think Star of Avalon would probably be better to be reworked instead of nerfing Alariel overall. Tyrannok Chariots get more armor and more cost. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Tyrannok Chariots can do a lot of kite damage, and now they're going to be very hard to counter. Most factions don't have the tools, or already struggle to find the tools to counter them efficiently, even with only 50 armor and low HP. Now at 80 armor, that is a massive spike in survivability. We're talking an improvement from taking 37.5% or having 37.5% damage reduction, so taking 60% or a little over 60% damage, to taking only 40% damage on average. So, you know, 50% improved survivability, which is, or you're taking, I guess, 40 to 60%, but you're taking 20% less damage, which is, well, I'm like completely muddling things up. Brain's a little fried, but 33% less damage you're taking is still, it's an insane boost. And I'm really not, and for only 50 more money, especially for Tyrnoks, who are already a solid unit, I think that's a mistake. Phoenix Guard get more health per entity. This seems to be in line with the other elf buffs. I don't mind this if it had come with a penalty to their cost, because Phoenix Guard are already really good. This, I think, is a big mistake. These guys should definitely have gone up in price by at least 50. So, with this buff to their HP. So I'm not a fan of this at all. Swordmaster Hoeth definitely could use that extra health. Should make him a little more stable. I think that's okay. Keep in mind that's 350 more HP across the whole, or 300, sorry, more HP across the whole unit. Dragon Princess got plus 1 AP, lost 1 in melee. It's fair. I wasn't a huge fan of this. It's been argued on the forums extensively. I'm not a huge fan of this buff, but in light of the fact that Demigryphs got an undeserved buff and Chaos Knights got an undeserved buff, in my opinion, I think it is only fair that Dragon Princess get a slight undeserved buff. My 2 cents there. But yeah, it is what it is. It's not the most game-breaking change. Froststar Phoenix now reduces normal melee damage. I think that's nice. Makes it a little more viable, hopefully. Shadow Crown's been made a playable hero in custom battles, which is kind of cool. He gets a whole bunch of abilities that you can see here. Doesn't impact Quick Match, so it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, but, you know, something fun to play around with. For Lizardmen, Arcos Sotek now does more damage, which is kind of cool. Cold One Spear Rider, still, I don't think it's going to be worth it at all, but it is an improvement. Cold One Spear Riders lost melee attack. Temple Guard lost leadership. That surprised me. It doesn't actually mention anything about the regiment around Temple Guard, but I would assume they also get caught up in this. So this actually will hurt Temple Guard. Temple Guard have no immunity to psychology, so -5 leadership means that they are now easier to potentially fear and then tear around. Nikaido got cheaper. Slan Matrices got cheaper. The Razor Dawns have been improved, or have had their trajectories improved. So all in all, I think these are some very good changes for Lizardmen, except for the Bastillodon change, which I feel is meme tier, but whatever. At least it's a buff to a bad unit. It's going to take forever for this guy and then the Imperial War Wagon to get anywhere. They're going to remain trash tier for like all eternity by the look of it. Now for Norshka, the Marauder Chieftain now moves faster, which is kind of a joke. Who really cares? Like, it is nice for consistency's sake, but it just doesn't matter too much. Marauder Chieftain is now cheaper, and has less armor on its chariot, so, you know, it's okay. Shaman Sorcerer's Marauder Chariot does get 5 more armor, which is nice. Wolfric's Chase loses 20 armor and is cheaper, which is actually also kind of nice because armor doesn't matter that much for a Heroic Chariot. What I will say I'm not the hugest fan of is the fact that Marauder Chariots are now getting plus 20 armor and minus 50 cost. I think that's completely unwarranted. Why are you increasing armor by 20 and reducing our cost by 50? That is nuts. Completely undeserved. Unless this is supposed to be minus 20 and there's just a typo here. I don't see how this is justified. They're already a very solid, cheap chariot option. So putting them down up by 20 armor is just insane in my opinion. Ice Troll's getting 4 melee defense. I guess it doesn't really matter too much because their leadership's just bad, so it's whatever. Marauder Hunters got changed to now have more ammo, a little more AP, which just doesn't matter. More range, which just isn't enough. Honestly, these guys are still gonna suck. I've mentioned before that I prefer them made into a hybrid unit, but it seems that CA is not going that path. It's actually been a proposal that's been supported by a lot of others, and yeah, CA just doesn't feel like doing that. So here we are with yeah, more ammo. It just doesn't matter on the Marauder. I'm gonna be blunt. This is like a useless upgrade because these guys are still gonna suck. They're still gonna melt the ranged fire. They're still not good enough against large to justify them. Extra range just isn't good enough. They're a very squishy and very expensive unit for what they do. I would not recommend. 0 out of 10. Marauder Great Weapons did get plus 2 AP melee damage, which I do think is a good buff. They were a little bit undertuned, and going up to 30 weapon strength should make them a little more appealing. For Skaven, Death Runners have been reworked entirely, or not entirely, but a lot. They now have reduced entity size, so I think this is to bring them in line with the Eshin Triads. They have more HP per model, which is nice. I'm not sure if it completely compensates for the entity loss. I haven't done the math on that, but it is at least partially compensating for that. They now have lower melee attack, but more bonus for infantry, so it's clear CA is trying to make them more specialized, which is okay. I liked their all-arounder Weeping Blade style before, but I'll take it. It's not terrible. Poison Wind Gloves got completely overhauled, and I actually don't know how I feel about this. More ammo, more damage. Lost their bonus versus large, but they did add a direct damage per contact effect. I'm not entirely sure what that means. If that means they'll do like damage over time to a big monster. If that's the case, that's actually kind of cool. Definitely will be excited to see how they perform. If that's not what it means, that's kind of disappointing. This unit's could be bad. I'm assuming this is basically like a Spirit Leech effect, or a mini, like a really mini Spirit Leech effect that you get when you hit a target. It'll be like a damage over time thing, but we will see. Deathglow Bombardiers plus 4 ammo, plus 50 cost. I think they could have just gotten plus 4 ammo and been fine. You don't need the cost increase there. And besides that, some naming changes to weapons teams, which is whatever. Doesn't really matter gameplay wise, but definitely for the changes that did happen could be pretty significant. For the Tomb Kings, Sepulchral Stalkers actually stock now. They did lose their missile resist. They've lost a whole bunch of their offensive prowess by the look of it, but are now much more designed to be a ranged unit. They actually are a short-range missile unit now, with increased damage per shot, but they only get 1 shot per projectile. They're much more accurate. They don't do poison damage anymore, but they're basically just designed to kill units like cavalry or big monsters, and then closing for melee for cleanup. And I actually think that's kind of cool. They're going to be, I think, a little bit of a hybrid, like sort of like Ushabti Great Bows. I think from what I'm reading here is the idea that these guys are going to be a little bit like Ushabti Great Bows that are very short ranged, but trade that for stock and better sustained combat stats, which I'm actually kind of excited about. Kind of interested to see how that pans out. And obviously lower ammo count than Ushabti Great Bows. But it seems to be a unique playstyle and for a monsters infantry. I actually want to see how that works. Necropolis Knights got a massive overhaul. 200 more expensive, much lower attack speed. Much better armor at plus 20, plus 12 health, which translates to I believe 196 more HP for the whole unit, so not quite 200. They should definitely be a lot tankier. I'm interested. I don't know if this is actually going to be worth that 200 multiplayer cost. I think it will help them a lot against non-AP heavy cap. Units like Blood Knights, units like Grail Knights, units like Dragon Princes are probably going to suffer a lot more against Necropolis Knights. Against something like Demigrave Knights, you're probably going to get dumpstered, and get dumpstered even worse than before now, cost efficiency-wise, I would assume. Perhaps it's my mistake here, but with the reduction in melee attack speed and the increase in cost, it could definitely be a problem in those sorts of fights. Tomb Scorpion got nerfed again. I'm not sure if that's justified, losing 400 HP. I believe this is on ultra settings, so this is probably just 300 health lost on large, but I feel like the Tomb Scorpion's actually in a decent spot right now. Maybe it's just because I don't use it very often. It doesn't really make its way into the way I play Tomb Kings, even though it's a strong unit. But I don't know. I'm not sure about that nerf. Cascade of Souls got buffed. Shoots faster. It's more accurate and has a bigger explosion, so I think that's a good buff. Chariots have been reworked a bit. Khalida, Katep, the Tomb King, and Tomb Prince all have less armor and are now have lower cost. Arcan's Chariot is tankier. Necrotect, for some ungodly reason, is more expensive. I don't think that is deserved. Weirdly enough, Skeleton Archer Chariots and Skeleton Chariots have gotten plus 30 armor and 100 multiplayer cost. I don't know why. These guys are literally supposed to be light chariots, and they're already very good at what they do. I feel like they should just stay that way. Why is CA changing them? And they're still going to be very cheap light chariots. These are still very cheap chariots, so it's going to make it much tougher for heavy cav, which used to be sort of the counter to these guys. These guys just crush infantry, heavy cav counters them. It's going to make it much tougher for heavy cap to counter them because 80 armor instead of 50 is a big difference. We already discussed how it means that you're taking a third less damage. And finally, the Bone Giant has had its accuracy nerfed, but does more damage overall. So, interesting change. It makes it more of a short-range brawler, I would assume. Makes it worse at counter battery fire. But what exactly this nerf entails, we'll see, I think. Or what it entails in practice, we'll see later down the road. Vampire Coast, Scurvy Dogs effectively have been made into dire Wolves. Depth Guard got more melee defense, which I don't think they needed. I think more speed would have been much more appropriate for the unit. But I guess not. Don't complain about some buffs. Depth Guard with Halberds are still going to be garbage. Depth Guard is still going to be very niche, in my opinion. Deck Droppers lost ammo in exchange for some more damage. That's meme tier. These guys are still trash. Like, holy hell, you're never going to want to take these guys. I don't even feel like breaking this down. I'm too tired to even think about it like this garbage. They don't do burst damage, and they can't do sustained damage. So CA decides to slightly reorganize when they do their damage. They'll do a tiny bit more burst, but it's still not legitimate burst damage. Give me a break. They need to be able to do more sustained damage. These guys need to be the equivalent of like gyrocopter steam guns if they're supposed to be worth anything. Even if slightly worse gyrocopter steam guns. But right now they're far too expensive for the garbage service they provide. Deck Counters got slightly buffed damage-wise. Rotting Leviathan got a bonus for infantry, which is cool. Trying to differentiate a bit more from the Ragnarok Spider. I like it. Whole bunch of changes on high threat stuff. Luther Arcana is now more expensive on the Terrorgeist, though I think that's just to counteract the cost decrease on foot. Sartosan and Free Company can now firewall moving, which is nice. I'm glad to see it. And the damn Paladin gets plus 8 bonus for large. Once again, pretty useless. Probably even more useless for this for the Vampire Coast who don't really care about the damn Paladin, but oh well. It's nice to see it, I guess. For Vampire Count, some big changes. Black Coach got more mass. That's fine. Black Coach is a solid unit already, but mass increases I think are not as game breaking, especially for single chariot. It should be okay. Hextrace, huge buff to melee stats, more melee defense, more melee damage. So I don't mind it. I think it's nice to see. Chillgeist got the same buff, but with increased cost. I think that's fair. Chillgeists were already a solid unit. Karenwraiths, plus 6 melee defense. Huge buff there. Could make these guys much more viable, but we will see if that is really the case in the long run. But it does seem like CA is making a serious effort to get Wraith units up into the limelight or make them more competitive. Black Knights have been reworked. They now have bonus versus infantry. They lost a lot of their damage output, their melee attack. They lost their melee damage, but they gained some AP, and they have gone up in cost. So A bit of an all over the place rework, but should make them better at backline harass, make them better at disrupting infantry. At the same time, worse against enemy cavalry, and worse in sustained melee. So we will see how much of a impact it has in practice. I think Black Knights are still going to be a very strong cavalry. Graveguard got massive overhaul. Both Graveguard variants got more expensive. They got buffs to their melee attack stats. They got improvements to their AP damage. And great weapons actually got even more bonus versus infantry. So these are now going to be up to 13 bonus versus infantry. That means that stacked on top of the buffs to their weapon strength, they're actually going to be up to, I believe, 55 weapon strength against infantry. For those of you who don't know, that is on par with hammerers for dwarves. That is pretty nuts. For a 950 gold unit, that is pretty disgusting. That could be pretty strong. Now, Graveguard at 850 gold. Granted, they did get 6 more attack and, or sorry, 4 AP damage and 2 more attack. I don't know why I had those. I'm not the brightest lad, but too many numbers. They did, however, lose 2 base melee damage. So I don't think that's worth 100 gold, really. I think this is a nerf to Graveguard in practice. I guess maybe that might be the intention, but I don't think Graveguard and 850 gold heavy infantry. I'm not sure they're going to be able to outfight, say, Chaos Warriors with these changes. Maybe they will, but yeah, not sure they're worth 850 gold. Certain men also took some nerfs in this change. Banshee got more attack. Cryptarch got more attack, which I like. Cryptarch need it. Banshee, not sold on that. I don't know if she needs it. I guess it does make her a better sniper, but could be a problem. Now for Chaos, this is where there's some quirky stuff. Forsaken got more armor. That's fair, I think. Forsaken kind of suck. Discussed that in the recent video on tiering the Chaos stuff. Gorby's Chariots and Chaos Chariots all got plus to armor, and this is really weird. I don't know why Gorby's Chariots got 10 more armor. I do not understand why Chaos Chariots got plus 20 armor. I already mentioned why I don't understand it in the case of Norska. I don't understand it in the case of Chaos either. It doesn't make sense to me. It's going to make them much harder to counter with generic Cav. Much like, I don't know what is up with these Chariot armor buffs, which I just don't think that are needed. These units are already very strong. Gorbis is well worth its money. Same with the Chaos Chariot. And now just arbitrarily buffing it is just a dumb move in my opinion. It just makes it harder to counter chariots with their intended counters like large and cavalry, while at the same time it still leaves them. They're still going to be disgusting as infantry. It's just much tougher to shut them down. But they're already a well micro chariot, well managed chariots can already be very tough to deal with. So I'm not a huge fan of that at all. Exalted Hero to get more melee defense, which I think is across the board very good, and is now much cheaper on the Manticore, which I think is fair. Same with the Chaos Lord. I definitely think that's solid. Mirage with Great Weapons also got that extra AP melee damage, which I think is very nice. So all in all, some good changes down here. Exalted Hero might be a little more competitive, though still not super competitive in my opinion. But these chariot changes are really awkward and really worrying against generic Cav, non-AP Cav. Like, sure, Demigriffs won't care, for example, but a lot of factions don't have Demigriffs, so not having a much more difficult time countering chariots with your own Cav is going to be tough. Now, there has been a general rebalance to melee attack and defense buffing abilities. They now are about 10% less effective. Abilities that buff damage are now about 20% more effective. For example, Potion of Strength now does 50% more damage. So, stuff like that. There's been some reworks to Elithanar's Decoy. It's now tougher to spot. Obviously, there were corrections to damage types. We already discussed those earlier. And Brave Scream has been nerfed, so some changes there. These are basically all corrections here. Dread 13th is now a little cheaper. Maybe it'll make the spell worthwhile. I'm not sure. Right now, I don't think I've ever seen it used in a serious game. So, yeah, not sure if that'll be enough to make it good, but maybe it will. Runes of Wrath and Ruin now last less, which I think is probably good. They were a little overtuned against certain targets before. Hopefully makes them a little more fair. Scroll of Power got nerfed, reducing the cooldown reduction. Not sure why, given that the one abusive situation where this ability existed, which was the case of the Warrior Priest, has now been removed. It's gone from the Warrior Priest, so why nerf it? It's now basically just a campaign item, I'm pretty sure. Man, it might be on some casters, but who cares? It's in Sarthorael or something. It might be actually, maybe it's on the Fimir. I'm not sure. I know there's some units that have it, but you just never bring it with them. Snare Net is now a passive ability that reduces enemy charge speed by 12%, which I think is a nerf from 18% previously. Skitter Leap got moved to Lore of Stealth, so it's been reworked a bit. For more info on the Lore of Stealth, you can obviously check it out on Zerkovic's channel, especially. I know he did a full breakdown of these of the lores. And accuracy buffers have been changed to just be flat buffs to accuracy, which is kind of whatever. Most of the big problems with the accuracy changes don't really. The fact of the matter, it's not even a problem. They just don't matter that much. Usually units are accurate enough. You're not going to waste your Winds of Magic or your heroes or whatever trying to buff accuracy. You're bringing them for other purposes. And really, most of the abilities that buff accuracy need to be buffed in other ways. Usually the AoE, because most of them are bound to characters, like Ballistic Enchantment. So, in my opinion, this isn't really a tangible or serious improvement or change. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I kind of doubt it. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. But yeah, multiplayer is an interesting mixed bag. Some of this stuff is really good. I'm not going to lie. Some of it's interesting. I don't mind the Skaven reworks. I think, as I mentioned earlier on, I actually liked, for example, the Dark Elf changes. Some of it's just weird. Like, some of these feel like meme tier changes. Flame Cannon, for example. War Wagon change. The Bastillodon Ark of Sotek change. It just feels kind of silly. At the same time, buffs to random or buffs to armor on some trades, they're just so awkward. It doesn't make sense. Buffs to HP on units that are already very strong, like Phoenix Guard, without a corresponding nerf in some other field. The fact that Bretonnia is getting a bunch of irrelevant changes which don't help them in any meaningful matchup or in any meaningful manner is just weird and dumb. It's like, why doesn't CA try to implement something to help them in with their serious issues? The changes to Minotaur costs are just ridiculous in my opinion. I don't know. There's definitely some stuff here that I don't think is great. Definitely some stuff that I think is very well done. So once again, it's a mixed bag. I guess kind of similar to the last patch. One thing I will say is that I do not really feel conflicted about is campaign. I feel that campaign has just been straight up improved. You guys are free to disagree, of course, and certainly if you don't agree with me, let me know. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you don't think it's a straight improvement, or if you have your own thoughts and opinions, or whatever, I'd honestly love to hear it. But whether on multiplayer and campaign, of course. But yeah, I think campaign is just straight better from what I'm reading here, and from gameplay I've seen from others. And for multiplayer, yeah, mixed bag. We'll see. I'm hoping to be proven wrong. I'm hoping that those armor changes are not necessarily that important. I'm hoping CA continues improving units that are underperforming. But I do think some of the approaches here are just wrong. But we will see. Anyway, I do hope you guys enjoyed this little rant breakdown. If you did, as always, leave a like, subscribe, share. Leave your own comments, thoughts, and opinions down below. I'd love to hear them. And I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.